November 20th, 1820. A whaling ship called the Essex is drifting in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, 1,500 miles from the nearest land, in every direction. Her crew are professional whale hunters, men who have spent years of their lives on this exact ocean, chasing this exact species. They know what these animals will do, and what they won't. That morning, a sperm whale surfaces near the ship. It doesn't dive. It doesn't flee. It just sits there on the surface, watching. Then it turns, picks up speed, and rams the ship head-on. It swims off. Then it turns around, and does it again, this time hard enough to tear the hull open. 20 men are now stranded in 3 small open boats, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, with no ship left to return to. Only 8 of them will make it home alive. And for 200 years, the same question has followed this story: did that whale attack on purpose? Did it attack on purpose? This is the thread the whole video pulls on. To understand how strange this attack really was, you need to understand who was on that ship. The Essex sailed out of Nantucket, Massachusetts, in August of 1819. Nantucket wasn't just a whaling port, it was the whaling capital of the world. Every man aboard had grown up around this industry. Some had been at sea chasing whales since they were teenagers. This wasn't a crew of tourists who stumbled into danger. These were professionals, on a voyage expected to last up to 3 years, hunting one species specifically, the sperm whale. Not for meat, for oil. Oil that lit the lamps and lubricated the machines of the early industrial world. A single sperm whale could be worth a fortune. Before they'd even reached the whaling grounds, the voyage had already tried to kill them once. Days after leaving port, a sudden squall knocked the ship onto its side and nearly sank it right there, before it had caught a single whale. Some of the crew reportedly saw it as a bad omen, a sign to turn back. The captain, a first-time commander named George Pollard, briefly considered doing exactly that. But the first mate, a young man named Owen Chase, pushed to continue. Chase would go on to write the account that this entire story survives from. They pressed on. 2 months later, deep in the South Pacific, they finally found what they were looking for, a pod of sperm whales. What happened next was so far outside anything a whaling crew had ever recorded, that when Owen Chase finally wrote it down, he almost apologized to his own readers for how unbelievable it sounded. On the morning of November 20th, the crew spotted whales and lowered their small hunting boats, as they had dozens of times before. Chase stayed aboard the Essex with a skeleton crew, repairing one of the boats, while the others rowed off to hunt. That's when he saw it. An enormous sperm whale. Chase estimated it at 85 feet long, nearly a third longer than the ship itself, surfaced roughly 100 yards from the bow. And it didn't behave like any whale they'd hunted before. It didn't dive. It didn't swim away. It lay motionless on the surface, facing the ship directly, for several seconds. Chase would later write that it looked as if the whale was watching them. Then it moved. Slowly at first, and then with increasing speed, directly toward the ship's bow. Chase gave the order to turn the wheel, but there wasn't enough time. The whale struck the hull head-on with what Chase described as a violent, shuddering impact, hard enough that the entire ship trembled and lurched, like it had run aground on rock, in the middle of open ocean. The whale surfaced again nearby, thrashing and convulsing at the surface, jaws snapping, clearly agitated. And then, instead of swimming off, it turned around and came back. This time it rammed the ship again, directly at the bow, the exact same point of impact, and this hit was the one that finished the job. The hull caved in completely. Water poured in. The Essex, a 238-ton ship, began to sink. In minutes, 20 men had gone from hunting the largest predator in the ocean, to floating helplessly in 3 small open whaling boats, 1,700 nautical miles from the nearest scrap of land, with no ship left to return to. By 1820, whaling ships had already been hunting sperm whales for over a century. Violence wasn't unusual, but it was a specific, understood kind of violence. A harpooned whale, in pain and panicking, would sometimes smash the small rowboats sent out to kill it. Sailors called it an occupational hazard. It was expected. It was, in a strange way, part of the job. But the Essex was not a rowboat. It was the ship itself, the largest object in the water for hundreds of miles. And this whale had not been harpooned. It hadn't been wounded. It hadn't been provoked by anything the crew had done that morning. According to Chase's own written account, it approached calmly, lined itself up, and picked its point of impact before it ever accelerated. That single detail is the reason this story has survived 2 centuries instead of fading into a footnote. Because a wounded animal lashing out in pain is one kind of story. A calm, unharmed animal deliberately identifying a target and striking it twice, in the same spot, is a different story entirely. And if that second version is true, it means we're dealing with an animal capable of something most people have never been taught to associate with a whale. To understand what might actually explain what happened that morning, you have to understand what's sitting inside a sperm whale's skull. Because it isn't just the largest brain that has ever existed on this planet. It's something far stranger than that. Start with the head itself. On a male sperm whale, the head alone can make up a third of the animal's entire body length. Proportionally, nothing else in the ocean is built like this. Adult males can reach up to 18 meters long and weigh as much as 57 tons. Housed inside that enormous skull is a structure found nowhere else in nature, the spermaceti organ, a massive reservoir of liquid wax the whale can heat and cool at will. For centuries, whalers assumed this was simply the source of valuable oil, hence the name, sperm whale. It's actually something closer to a piece of biological engineering. The leading scientific theory is that the spermaceti organ helps the whale focus and amplify its echolocation clicks into a directed acoustic beam, while also helping regulate its buoyancy for the extreme dives this species is famous for. Because sperm whales are not casual divers. They are the deepest diving mammals with teeth on the entire planet. Confirmed dives have exceeded 2,000 meters, and there is evidence suggesting they may descend even further. They can hold their breath for up to 90 minutes at a time, hunting in complete darkness, thousands of feet below any trace of sunlight. Down there, they're not using their eyes, they're using sound. A sperm whale generates some of the loudest biological sounds of any animal on Earth, sharp, powerful clicks that travel out through the water, bounce off any solid object in their path, and return as an echo the whale can interpret. Using that echo alone, a sperm whale can determine an object's size, its distance, and its direction, precise enough to track and catch prey like giant squid, one of the largest invertebrates on the planet, in total darkness, a mile beneath the surface. Hold on to that, an animal that can pinpoint a squid's exact position in pitch darkness a mile down, using sound alone. Because that same precision is exactly what makes the Essex attack so hard to write off as an accident. And the brain generating all of this isn't just large, it's the largest brain that has ever existed on Earth, in any animal, living or extinct. Roughly 8 liters in volume, close to 9 kilograms in weight. That's around 5 to 6 times heavier than a human brain. This isn't an animal running on blind instinct, it's an animal built, in almost every way biology allows, for precision. So the same animal responsible for what happened to the Essex is an animal that can track an object the size of a basketball, in complete darkness, a mile below the surface, using sound alone. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If an animal is capable of that level of precision, did it actually know exactly what it was aiming at when it turned toward that ship? There are 2 explanations for what happened that morning. One of them is far more convenient than the other. The convenient version says it was a misunderstanding. Sperm whales in that region were known to behave aggressively toward each other during this period, bulls competing for territory. Under this theory, the whale picked up the low groan of the ship's wooden hull moving through water, mistook it for a rival male, and reacted the way any bull would to a threat. Not an attack on the Essex. A case of mistaken identity. It's a reasonable theory. It's also the one that lets everyone off the hook. Here's what it doesn't explain. Chase didn't describe a whale that panicked and lunged. He described a whale that surfaced, went still, and watched the ship for several seconds before it ever moved, behavior that doesn't match a startled animal misreading a sound. He described it lining up its angle before accelerating, not thrashing blindly toward the nearest noise. And he described it striking the exact same point on the hull twice, on 2 separate approaches, after backing off and repositioning in between. Mistaken identity explains one collision. It struggles to explain a second one, aimed at the same spot, by an animal that had already had time to reassess. And remember what this animal is capable of. A sperm whale can track prey the size of a basketball in absolute darkness, a mile below the surface, using nothing but returning sound. An animal built for that level of acoustic precision is not an animal that loses track of an 87-foot wooden ship sitting motionless on the surface in broad daylight. If it could find a squid in the dark by echo alone, it could see exactly what it was aiming at. That doesn't prove intent. Chase is the only eyewitness, and he wrote his account in the aftermath of watching his ship destroyed, not exactly ideal conditions for a clinical read of animal behavior. But of the 2 explanations on the table, only one of them accounts for every detail he actually wrote down. And that's the one that's kept this story alive for 200 years, not as an accident, but as the only confirmed case in recorded history of a sperm whale identifying a ship and deciding to end it. What followed was months at sea. Their food supplies, calculated for a much shorter journey, ran out. Storms battered the tiny boats. Thirst became as dangerous as starvation. Men began to die, one by one, from exposure and lack of food and water. And the survivors, faced with a choice between watching everyone die or finding a way to continue, made a decision that has haunted this story ever since. They began eating the bodies of the men who had already died, in order to survive. Eventually, it went further than that. On one of the boats, with no food left and death closing in, the surviving men resorted to drawing lots, deciding by chance which one of them would be killed so the others could live. The name drawn belonged to the captain's own young cousin. Only a handful of these men made it home, and what happened to their story after they were rescued is the reason you've probably heard of this event before, without ever knowing its real name. After roughly 3 months adrift, only 8 of the original 20 crew members were still alive when rescue ships finally found them, spread across separate locations in the Pacific. Some of the survivors were found so weakened and disoriented that their rescuers initially struggled to understand what they'd been through. When Owen Chase's written account of the disaster was published the following year, it spread through the maritime world as one of the most harrowing survival stories ever recorded. Decades later, it reached a young writer named Herman Melville, who used the sinking of the Essex, a real ship, destroyed by a real whale, in a way no one could fully explain, as one of the central inspirations for his novel about a captain's obsession with a whale he believed had targeted him on purpose. That novel was Moby Dick. 200 years later, sperm whales are still the deepest diving hunters on the planet, still using a language of clicks we're only beginning to decode, still capable of finding prey the size of a basketball in total darkness a mile below the surface. The Essex remains the only confirmed case in recorded history of one of these animals sinking a ship that size. Whether what happened that morning was an accident of sound and instinct, or something closer to intent, is a question we may never fully answer. And that unanswered question is exactly what makes this animal one of the most misunderstood predators in the ocean.